Hi guys, I'm Kaysilyn Baez, a fourth year psychology student, and I will discuss the topic Introduction to Psychological Assessment and Psychometrics. So, what is psychological testing and assessment? In everyday lives, we use measurement in some form, and each field has its own set of measuring tools and measuring units. For example, when we ask someone how tall he is, he will use measuring units such as feet to describe his height. So here are the contents of this topic. First, testing and assessment. Second, tools of psychological assessment. Third, who, what, why, how, and where. Later, we will explain and elaborate these contents. So let's go first with testing and assessment. So before explaining what is psychological testing, let us first discuss its history. The roots of contemporary psychological testing and assessment can be found in early 20th century France. In 1905, Alfred Binet and a colleague published a test designed to help place Paris school children in appropriate classes. During World War II, the military would depend even more on psychological tests to screen recruits for service. There were tests to measure not only intelligence but also personality, brain functioning, performance at work, and many other aspects of psychological and social functioning. So let us define what is psychological assessment. It is defined as a gathering and integration of psychology-related data for the purpose of making a psychological evaluation that is accomplished through the use of tools such as tests, interviews, case studies, behavioral observation, and specially designed apparatuses and measurement procedures. Next, let us define psychological testing. It is the process of measuring psychology-related variables by means of devices or procedures designed to obtain a sample of behavior. Lastly, we should also define what is psychometrics. Psychometrics may be defined as the science of psychological measurement. Variants of these words include the adjective psychometric, which refers to measurement that is psychological in nature, and the nouns psychometrist and psychometrician, both terms referring to a professional who uses, analyzes, and interprets psychological test data. Now, let's discuss the varieties of assessment. There are four varieties of assessment. First, educational assessment. It refers to the use of the test and other tools to evaluate abilities and skills relevant to success or failure in a school or preschool context. Next, the retrospective assessment. It is defined as the use of evaluative tools to draw conclusions about psychological aspects of a person as they existed at some point in time prior to the assessment. Next is the remote assessment. It refers to the use of tools of psychological evaluation to gather data and draw conclusions about a subject who is not in physical proximity to the person or people conducting the evaluation. Last is the ecological momentary assessment or EMA. It refers to the in-the-moment evaluation of specific problems and related cognitive and behavioral variables at the very time and place that they occur. Now that we're done discussing the varieties of assessment, let's now proceed with the process of assessment. First, in general, the process of assessment begins with a referral for assessment from a source. Next, the assessor may meet with the assessee or others before the formal assessment in order to clarify aspects of the reason for referral. Next, the assessor prepares for the assessment by selecting the tools of assessment to be used. Next, subsequent to the selection of instruments or procedures to be employed, the formal assessment will begin. Lastly, after the assessment, the assessor writes a report of the findings that is designed to answer the referral question. There are three different approaches to assessment: collaborative psychological assessment, therapeutic psychological assessment, and dynamic assessment. In collaborative psychological assessment, the assessor and assessee may work as partners from initial contact through final feedback. In therapeutic psychological assessment, Self discovery and new understanding are encouraged throughout the assessment process. In the dynamic assessment, it refers to an interactive approach to psychological assessment that usually follows a model of evaluation, intervention at some sort, and evaluation. Let's now discuss the tools of psychological assessment. First are the tests. Test may be defined as simply measuring device or procedure. When the word test is prefaced with a modifier, it refers to a device or procedure designed to measure a variable related to that modifier. So, what do we mean by psychological test? It refers to a device or procedure designed to measure variables related to psychology, such as intelligence, personality, aptitude, interests, attitudes, or values. Psychological tests and other tools of assessment may differ with respect to a number of variables such as content, format, administration procedures, scoring and interpretation procedures, and technical quality. These are the variables of assessment: content, format, administration procedures, scoring and interpretation procedures, and technical quality. Content refers to the topic of the assessment. Format refers to the layout or how the assessment looks. Administration procedures refers to how the test is administered. Scoring and interpretation procedures refers to how the assessment is scored and interpreted. Technical quality or the psychometric soundness refers to how reliable and accurate the test is. The second tool of psychological assessment is the interview. It is a method of gathering information through direct communication involving reciprocal exchange. Interviews differ with regard to many variables such as their purpose, length, and nature. There are different types of interviews such as face-to-face, online interviews, email interviews, text messaging interview, panel interview, and motivational interviewing. During the face-to-face interview, the interviewer is probably taking note not only of the content but also both verbal and non-verbal behavior of the assessee. And now that we are experiencing a pandemic, interviews are usually conducted by various electronic means such as online interviews, email interviews, and text messaging interviews. Next is the panel interview or the board interview. It usually consists of more than one interviewer. Last is the motivational interviewing. It may be defined as a therapeutic dialogue that combines person centered listening skills, such as openness and empathy, with the use of cognition altering techniques designed to positively affect motivation and affect therapeutic change. The next tool is the portfolio. Portfolio consists of work products, whether retained on paper, canvas, film, video, audio, or some other medium. The appeal of portfolio assessment as a tool of evaluation extends to many other fields, including education. Some have argued that the best evaluation of a student's writing skills can be accomplished not by the administration of a test, but by asking the student to compile a selection of writing samples. Next is the case history data. It refers to records, transcripts, and other accounts in written, pictorial, and other form that preserve archival information, official and informal accounts, and other data and items relevant to the assessee. Case history data may include files or excerpts from files maintained at institutions and agencies such as schools, hospitals, employers, religious institutions, and criminal justice agencies. Other examples of case history data are letters and written correspondence, photos and family albums, newspaper and magazine clippings, home videos, movies, audio tapes, work samples, artwork, doodlings, and accounts and pictures pertaining to interests and hobbies. Posting on social media such as Facebook or Twitter may also serve as case history data. Next is the behavioral observation. It may be defined as monitoring the actions of others or oneself by visual or electronic means while recording quantitative or qualitative information regarding those actions. Behavioral observation is often used as a diagnostic aid in various settings such as inpatient facilities, behavioral research laboratories, and classrooms. Sometimes, researchers venture outside of the confines of clinics, classrooms, workplace, and research laboratories in order to observe behavior of humans in a natural setting, the setting in which the behavior would typically be expected to occur. This variety of behavioral observation is referred to as naturalistic observation. The next tool is the role-play tests. Role-play may be defined as acting an improvised or partially improvised part in a simulated situation. So what do we mean by a role-play test? It is a tool of assessment wherein assessees are directed to act as if they were in a particular situation. Assessees may then be evaluated with regards to their expressed thoughts, behaviors, abilities, and other variables. The format of the role play could range from live scenarios with live actors or computer-generated simulations. Outcome measures for such an assessment might include ratings related to various aspects of the individual's ability to resolve the conflict, such as the effectiveness of approach, quality of resolution, and number of minutes to resolution. We can also use computer as a tool of psychological assessment. Computers can serve as test administrators whether online or offline, and as highly efficient test scorers. Within seconds, they can derive not only test scores but also patterns of test scores. The ABA Committee on Psychological Test and Assessment was convened to consider the pros and cons of computer assisted assessment and assessment using the Internet. Among the advantages over paper and pencil tests cited were: number 1, test administrators have greater access to potential test users because of the global reach of the Internet. Number 2, scoring and interpretation of test data tend to be quicker than for paper and pencil tests. Number 3, costs associated with Internet testing tend to be lower than costs associated with paper and pencil tests. And number 4, the Internet facilitates the testing of otherwise isolated populations, as well as people with disabilities for whom getting to a test center might prove a hardship. Of course, there are also other tools of assessment. Blu-ray player or an old DVD, specially created videos, virtual reality technology or VR technology, thermometers, biofeedback equipment, pineal plethysmograph, and many more. In general, there has been no shortage of innovation on the part of the psychologists in devising measurement tools or adapting existing tools for use in psychological assessment. Let's now discuss the last content of this topic: the who, what, why, how, and where of assessment. Who are the parties involved? There are 5 parties involved in assessment: test developer, test user, test taker, society, and other parties. Test developer are the persons that develop the test. The test user are the persons who use or administers the test, such as clinicians, counselors, school psychologists, human resource personnel, and many more. The test taker refers to the persons who are the subject of assessment or the test taker or the assessee. Society is part of this party because as society changes, psychological variable emerges. Other parties refers to organizations, companies, and governmental agencies that sponsor or supports the development of tests. Next, let us discuss in what types of settings are assessment conducted and why. In educational setting, achievement test and diagnostic test are being used. Achievement test evaluates accomplishment or the degree of learning that has taken place. Meanwhile, the diagnostic test refers to a tool of assessment used to help narrow down and identify areas of deficit to be targeted for intervention. Next is the clinical setting. The tests employed in the clinical settings may be intelligence test, personality test, neuropsychological test, or other specialized instruments. Next is the counseling settings. Measures of social and academic skills and measures of personality, interest, attitudes, and values are among the many types of tests that a counselor might administer to a client. Next is the geriatric settings. Wherever older individuals reside, they may at some point require psychological assessment to evaluate cognitive, psychological, adaptive, or other functioning. Assessments can also be used in business and military settings. A wide range of achievement, aptitude, interest, motivational, and other tests may be employed in the decision to hire as well as in related decisions regarding promotions, transfer, job satisfaction, and eligibility for further training. Next is the governmental and organizational credentialing. One of the many applications of measurement is in governmental licensing, certification, or general credentialing of professionals. For example, are the board exams. Next is the academic research setting. Conducting any sort of research typically entails measurement of some kind, and any academician who ever hopes to publish research should ideally have a sound knowledge of measurement principles and tools of assessment. Last is the other settings. Many different kinds of measurement procedures find application in a wide variety of settings. Let's discuss how assessments are conducted. Here are the test users' obligation in assessment. Before the test, ethical guidelines dictate that when test users have a discretion with regard to the test administered, they should select and use only the test or tests that are most appropriate for the individual being tested. Another obligation of the test user before the test administration is to ensure that a prepared and suitably trained person administers the test properly. The test users have also the responsibility of ensuring that the room in which the test will be conducted is suitable and conducive to the testing. During the test administration, and especially in one-on-one or small group testing, rapport between the examiner and the examinee can be critically important. Lastly, after a test administration, test users have many obligations as well. These obligations range from safeguarding the test protocols to conveying the test results in a clearly understandable fashion. Lastly, let us discuss where to go for authoritative information or the reference sources. First is the test catalogs. It contains general descriptions of tests, including what is designed to do and who it is designed to be used with. Another is the test manuals. It is usually the most detailed source available for information regarding the standardization sample and test administration instructions. Next is the professional books. It may contain one-of-a-kind authoritative insights of a highly experienced assessment professional regarding the structure and content of the test, as well as more practical insights regarding the administration, scoring, and interpretation of the test. Next is the reference volume. It contains descriptions and critical reviews of a test written by third parties who presumably have nothing to gain or lose by praising or criticizing the instrument. Next is the journal articles. It is the up-to-date source of reviews and studies of psychometric soundness. Another is the online databases. Widely known and respected online databases such as ERIC database are virtual gold mines of useful information containing varying amounts of details. We can also search for other sources such as Directory of Unpublished Experimental Mental Measures. Before ending this topic, I want to leave a quote from Terry Pratchett. According to Terry, everything is a test. If you want to learn more about this topic, here are the reference materials that I used. If you have other questions, comments, or suggestions, don't hesitate to contact me at my contact information. Thank you for listening.